So in death, how do we balance the human rights scorecards, the clampdown on dissent, the minimal freedom of expression, and the other end in which Moi allowed for the opening up of the multi-party space and democracy in the country and equally upheld peace, despite the turbulent times across the East African region and the Horn of Africa?
Now, Ayub, you'd realize that there was a fight for leadership in the country after Kenyatta's death. Jaramogi Odinga was Jomo Kenyatta's peer. Mm-hmm. He was Jomo Kenyatta's age mate and peer and rival, and they would fight. Now there's a new kid on the block.
That was Moi.
The kid wanted to be president. And he is here, he's been vice president for a very long time, resigned and waited to be president. And right now, Moi is coming to take over. It was a sorry state for Jaramogi. Seeing someone ascending into power, they didn't even think. Someone who came with KADU, Elegco, and they decided to merge with KANU. And now, Kenyatta decided now to use Moi in Rift Valley as his pillar. Whatever Kenyatta saw in Moi, we don't know, because people would see that he was not a good leader. So there was a tussle between the old Jaramogi and someone who seemed like he didn't know what he was doing even in State House. Even in his burial in 1994, Moi died, and he went to Nyanza amid the calls of the university students who were saying, Okwadwa Moi, we don't want Moi here. So there were these stone-faced people who were surrounding Moi, and they meant business. And they were like, touch Mzee and we. So even that time, Jaramogi was given a flight to Bondo. But he refused. They decided to go by road, 400 kilometers from Nairobi, here in this mausoleum in Nairobi, to Bondo. There was this war of multipartism in the country. And Jaramogi was a thorn in Moi's flesh because he was very experienced from Mau Mau into government. He was guerrilla by nature. Now finding someone even who didn't see Mau Mau, Moi. And after that now fighting with Moi.
And a mere teacher.
A mere teacher. A class 7 teacher. That's what even I wanted to tell you about later, that the way you run your life, they just check the people who are around you. That's how you would gauge Moi's government. And the country will just become like the choir master, like the president. That's how the country was, and that's how Moi was. Now, in the run for multi-party,
yes,
Moi had to give in. He did not give out on a silver platter. It was a fight and a fight. And Moi, even you remember the cattle rustling thing?
Yep.
That was being organized by the Kenyatta goons in Mount Kenya. That was meant to stop Moi. You see? So Moi had fought many wars until he feared even multi-party. And he was thinking even multi-party is another giant that is coming in. We don't know where it's going to head, so we are not going to accept it. You see? We're not going to accept it. So in the freedom of expression, and I want to say that Moi also was a moving target, in that every day, even at home, my parents would ask, Moi amesema nini? Nyamazeni, taarifa ya habari inaanza. He was a moving target. Okay. So mtukufu rais.
The news bulletin must start with Moi.
In Kalenjin they used to say Kalenera Moi. Moi amesema nini? So this guy used to fear everything. He used to control everything. He feared multi-party, and the multi-party was a giant that was coming in, and he didn't know how to deal with it. And he had to push it back until I remember one day Jaramogi was jailed in Siaya cells. I was in Siaya that time. And Siaya was smoking with tear gas. Before that time, the whole Nyanza region was ungovernable. We don't want Moi was a song of Nyanza region. But Moi feared. Moi's assassination was being planned by some anti-stock theft unit that was being planned in Rift Valley, akina Koinange hapa, and the Mount Kenya, those mafia, the people from Mount Kenya who didn't want Moi. Moi was scared. What is this multi-party thing you're telling me? No.
Given the letters that went down, and the former provisional commission, the former police officer slapped him at some point,
Yes.
then went to Sudan before he flew to Zurich in Switzerland,
Zurich, yes, Switzerland.
before he came back again.
And wrote a letter.
He went into political oblivion later,
Yes.
never to be seen again or resurfaced. That was in Nyeri County. But he never took personal revenge, and that was
He
his
did.
personality.
He did.
Well, politically, but not personally.
He served it
Yes,
cold.
He served it cold.
Yes.
And he had the last laugh. Well, Mugambi Lechana, he was a man in many. I mean, you look at Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, he was a cocktail in nature, a man who you could not separate from Mzee the man and Mzee the politician. I mean, he was an African statesman. He was not a man of the Mzungu, as many say, and he was so jovial at times, he even enjoys relationship and interaction with his own staff. But beneath that, again, is the aspect of corruption, which is so, I mean, ingrained and deep-rooted at the time when many scandals happened under his watch. That was in the late 90s, and as we came to 2002, before he handed over power to President Emilio Mwai Kibaki. I mean, in terms of the scorecard of his legacy, corruption will feature much high, isn't it? Even as he will be laid to rest on Wednesday at his Kabarak home in Nakuru County. And is it perhaps the deep rooting that has caused the present-day corruption that is equally deeply entrenched in state institutions, where we see 70% of Kenyans pay bribe, as per the International Transparency Report released just recently?
I can't agree more, Ayub. If you look, during the Moi's reign, it's unfortunate that there was not much freedom of media, freedom of expression, freedom of course, so many freedoms were curtailed. That's the reason why we didn't know, many people at the Mashinani didn't know so much about the corruption that is happening, because it was not being reported. You report it, tomorrow your media houses may be closed or something happens to it. So if you from the beginning, during Moi's rule, there was too much corruption. That's why there was less development. Of course, too much corruption means less development, because people are taking, they are enriching themselves. And I will give you this example and ask you, Ayub, tell me a single individual who worked under Moi, either a State House controller, even his personal aides, look at his ministers, who is not filthy rich today. Where did that wealth come from? Look at Moi himself. When he was getting to politics, he had nothing. We know that.
Yes.
Right? Where did that wealth come from? Of course, it is not a straight-earned wealth. I don't want to create anything here, but the truth be told, your wealth is determined with what you do, all right? So you get too much. There was no watchdog for the. We had very strong opposition, but the opposition didn't do much because we were still fighting for multi-party, whatever. Every day it was a fight. Moi must go, Moi must go.
Okay.
But unfortunately, most of the things that he allowed to happen in his tenure as a president were not good. And these are the corruption that is still rooted. I don't want to say that when he said Kanu rule for 100 years, it means definitely that they inherited some behaviors that have been passed on and off. And that is why we still don't have that integrity, or that our leaders still don't have that integrity to really condone corruption. Because I can tell you the truth, with the rate of corruption in this country, definitely even the rate of development is going to be slower. But as I said again, you see, we have spoken about it again. Moi respected the men of the cloth. Moi respected God so much. Okay. And I can attribute that to his wife. You know, his wife was a very saved woman, a very good woman. Lena was, I don't think he would have gotten a better, I don't want to say anything, but in terms of herself as a person, she was a very prayerful person. And even if she disagreed with the husband, then definitely you may not have seen it. But those are some of the reasons why maybe she moved to stay with her children in Kabarak and left the State House because maybe quite some things may not have happened right, or she may not have liked a lot of things. But I respect him for that also, because you know God at the end of it all is the only one who can keep you alive and can keep you moving. But until we learn, we need to learn a lot from Moi, if I may say this.
Okay,
we need to learn a lot from Moi,
like
from his leadership. One, how he was able to maintain peace and respect from all the politicians or from all the leaders. Because as you can see today, the president is suffering a lot because he doesn't command that respect across the country. So he needs to learn some of those things so that he may be able to ensure, you know, he's the one who is ruling, my friend. So he requires, or he deserves the respect for him to be able to move to another level. So we need to learn such kind of things from him. We also need to learn from the mistakes of Moi.
Okay.
Some of them being, of course, the corruption that was there.
Okay.
All right? So that we don't have to live a life of handouts.